Hey, everybody, welcome. Looking forward to talking with Shachar Meron. Shachar, it's great to connect with you. You are a partner and creative strategist at Bluegreen Branding. Looking forward to diving in. I love talking about branding. Before we get started, I always, as a business coach, I work with people who are successful and stuck all over the country. So I'd like to ask my guests, where's your recent stuck and how'd you get unstuck?
Where's my recent stuck? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I don't know, man. My recent stuck, if you're talking about where in my life do I need to kind of get unjustled? I've been doing consulting and brand strategy for years, and also teaching at the University of Illinois, branding and advertising for years. I'm in my 10th year now, and I've never been at a job for any more than a couple of years because I get bored so easy. So this is a rare experience for me where Bluegreen's going 5 years, teaching's 10 years. I think I just want to make sure that I stay fresh, and that whatever comes next, I can kind of mix it up occasionally. I don't want to be doing exactly this for the rest of my life.
Well, you know what, that you bring up a really good point. I mean, staying fresh and being current, I think those are really, really important things. I think sometimes people have to really consciously remember to actually do that so they don't get complacent. So that's always good. Yeah, think community. We talk a lot about that is, what are you doing to evolve your business? So it's not only fresh for you to come to every day, whether it's your business or your career, that you're working within a business, but what are you doing to make sure that the message is fresh for the people and the new generations that are using your product and or service? All right, thanks for talking about that. So let's move into branding. How do you define a brand?
So I actually teach this in class. Branding, sometimes we say a brand is a promise of expectation that you make to your customer or your user. Sometimes if people are not in the space of branding, that sounds like a really esoteric, abstract answer. So sometimes it refers more to like the symbol or the representation or the soul of a company. People think about brands as the collection of things like, oh, it's their logo, it's their name, it's their slogan. But we know that that's more the surface level. If you dig deeper, a brand is much more the place a company or organization or person occupies inside the mind of your target audience. So your image, your reputation, what do people think and feel about you?
Yeah. I always kind of define brand as like, what does somebody say about you when you walk out of the room? Or what does somebody say about your brand when you walk, when that, is not in front of them, or do they remember it? But I want to talk about something you just said, the soul of the company. How do you mean?
Yeah. So the idea that a business and a brand are not the same thing, but they should be so close, right? And often when people refer to the business, they're referring to, again, some of the more tangible aspects of it, products you make, the people you hire, your space that you occupy, whatever, operations. And then the brand has to do often with more the mission, the message, the vision of the company, the values, those sorts of things, which once upon a time lived in the domain of marketing. And I think now people understand it goes well beyond that. So you want your brand to be not even just like a layer on top of a business, but like woven into the business. But again, it's often some of those more abstract things like you talked about, your reputation.
Yeah. And sometimes I think, sometimes people get disconnected from the soul of the business. So how do you recommend, as a business owner and somebody who is connecting to the branding, how do you get people reconnected to their brand? Because I think, as you talk about kind of like a freshness, sometimes that freshness is just a reconnection to the soul of their company and the brand and their messaging. So I would imagine, I know as a business coach, I work with companies sometimes and individuals that are, they have kind of disconnected from it a little bit. And when I can get them to reconnect to it, it just recharges them completely. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's exciting to get reconnected with the brand side of things. What you want to make sure is it's not like that one-off time, right? You don't want to have that like, hey, we got leadership or the company to talk about values. We got excited that day, and then we just set it aside. It exists in a PowerPoint deck somewhere that we don't look at again for a year. Let's go back to our daily business. You don't want it to be that sort of a thing. Personally, I like it and have written about how to measure brand equity a lot of times I try to connect it to that part of it as much as possible for clients, so that they themselves can like talk to their bosses or whoever it is and make a case for investing in brand, make a case for having brand values and mission more actually guide business decisions. That often actually happens at the employee level as well. You don't
Yeah.
want situations where you say, our values are this, and therefore everybody we hire, we look at through that lens, except it's BS, because then once employees are working there, actually they're measured by like, are you meeting your quarterly numbers and things like that? You don't want that kind of a disconnect. So
Yeah.
often we'll actually work with clients to try to measure brand as much as possible, the value of it, the brand equity, but then make sure that the brand itself is getting lived day to day with employees. And then, yes, of course, when you get into things like product development, marketing, and communications, you want it to come through all that as well. But that's like the tail end of things. So
Yeah.
sometimes the tail's wagging the dog, and people start with that. What do we want people to think about us? And then they kind of work backwards to who we are.
Yeah.
I would say start with who you are, do everything inside out.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. So you are a professor at the University of Illinois and you teach branding. Yes.
Branding and advertising. That's right.
Yeah. So you're teaching, what are the ages of the people that you're teaching?
I largely teach undergraduates. Right now I have classes that have everything from freshmen to seniors. So that's 18 to 22. I
Okay.
had for many years taught the senior capstone course. So that's like the last class that seniors take before they graduate. That was a
Yeah.
bunch of 21, 22-year-olds. And then more recently taking on some more intro courses for 18, 19-year-olds. I also teach a master's class in brand strategy. And that's actually an online program called Strategic Brand Communications that's designed for working professionals. So actually our average student in that program is, we like to say a 30-year-old woman in marketing in Chicago or New York or wherever that is taking courses on the side. And I teach the
Yeah.
intro course for that.
All right. That's great. And so let's talk about your undergrad students. I'm a business coach. I work with solopreneurs to Fortune companies, but I just actually launched another company which is only coaching. It's called Launch 3, only coaching for 18 to 26-year-olds. It can be found at launch-3.com. And I'm really excited about it. We just launched it 2 weeks ago, and it's going to be incredible. But what do 18 to the 26-year-old, the 18 to 22, what do they need? What do they want to know today that's different than 30 years ago?
Some of the things are pretty timeless. What do they need to know? That's not how I was expecting the question, but they need to understand, this is like the typical college thing, the how to ask questions, how to think critically, those types of things. We can teach information, and we do teach information. But information is just, again, it's the tail end of things, and people just are trying to memorize stuff. They don't really learn it. Understanding how to look at the world through a curious eye, asking the types of questions, not just what and how, but also why. I find that is the real key to success. And, what do they want to learn? It depends on who they are. Some of them, if they're close to a life change moment, like say seniors about to graduate, they want to know, how do I get my job? How do I get my first job? How do I get my foot in the door? There's important questions, and there's ways that we guide them on that. Your 18 and 19-year-olds are not thinking about that at all. They may be still trying to explore what sorts of subjects are they interested in. Some of them have picked a major, some have not. And so that ends up being a lot more about, how do you take your interests and talents and passions and turn that into a vocation somehow? And along the way, don't just try to think about like, how do I put this, square peg in a round hole, but rather like, how can I navigate this world? There's so many things that people can do in this world. There's so many jobs out there that defy, any definition, things that didn't exist back when we were in school ourselves.
Right.
And so rather than just try to say like, how do you prepare yourself for that next job in a couple of years? It's like, how do you prepare yourself for a trajectory that's going to span decades and is going to change no matter what, especially in this field of advertising. But how do you navigate that so that you're always building on things, channeling what makes you special? So that's tricky to do. It's not an easy thing to do just in the classroom. It often involves a multitude of things, getting them to work together, having discussion forums, but then also like one-on-one mentorship and guidance and clubs and all those types of things.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's great. It's, this generation, the generation you're teaching, the launch generation that we're working with, they're going to change the world, right? They're going to be they've been raised on technology, And so a lot of this resonates on such a different level. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to see where it goes.
I will say though, while as much as they're raised on technology, many of them pride themselves on being tech savvy, and then they learn that means different things. Just being on TikTok on your phone for 4 hours a day does not necessarily make you great at technology. Some of them can't save an email, a PDF to save their lives. So again, it's the how and why do we use this stuff as opposed to just let me follow the steps.
Well, what I'm realizing too is as we've kind of built this business, this branch of the business is they really are looking for more sales experience, training there, and they're not able. They don't have the. They're all. Many of them are looking to evolve on how they even interact in a human to human interaction, where they don't have their phones, in front of them or to use as a crutch. And like you said earlier, to really critically think and almost like finding silence in a space to do that. And it's interesting. All right, so take me back. You have such a branding background. Like, who was a mentor, somewhere around the age of 10ish or a little before or after, that kind of planted a seed that got you to where you are today?
I started on the creative side. I was a cartoonist when I was younger, and even to this day, if you go to Bluegreen Branding's website, I have a bunch of cartoons up there as well. That's how I get to live through that. I wanted to go pro. I almost did actually. But when I started college, I was an art major. I thought, well, I like to draw, then this must be the path for me. And then I learned, you know what? I don't want to be a starving artist. I don't want to be sitting in 3-hour studios drawing still lifes and things like that. I want to use the creativity and the art but intertwine that with business and a career somehow. And so advertising ended up, I took a class in advertising and that really stuck out to me. I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't realize people could do this kind of a thing for a living. And it seemed like that marriage of the art and and when I say art, I mean that loosely, because also the writing side of things as well, right? Just the creative parts. But there's also a science to it, a social science to it. There's also a business to it. And so I loved how those things came together. But yeah, I fell into this world. It was in college. I did not expect that when I was younger that I would get into this sort of a thing. Later on, I started as a copywriter and then grew up through the creative side of things, but really got interested in strategy. I did my master's in advertising and learned a lot about brand strategy there. So working at smaller and mid-sized agencies in my career gave me a chance to try different things. And I just found myself gravitating more towards the strategy side to the point that I'm now halfway between creative strategist. At the time that I picked that title, it was made up. Now it turned out it's actually a thing. But that's how I arrived to it, kind of from the creative side.
I love it. It just echoes that business is never a straight line, and what we think we are going to do, there's so many influences that kind of come across our path that can lead us maybe in a different direction. That's great. I love that. All right, let's do a quick speed round. A book that's had the biggest impact on you, or a TED Talk, or an article.
All right, let's see. There's a book called When by Daniel Pink, which I really enjoy. It takes a look at how we dissect time and perceive time. And I'm big on time as a resource. It's tough to not look through everything through the lens of how much time do I have, but it did open my eyes and changed a lot of my behaviors.
Yeah. Good. I love that. I love his books, and I love talking about time. I do a keynote. I'm actually doing one on Friday, like a 4-hour training on time management. I do it all over the country. I love it. So it's a crowd favorite. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
I read this thing recently that really I have to remind myself of often, which is comparison is the thief of joy. It's just a great expression. I swear I probably saw it on Reddit. I'm not going to try to be really deep about it, but that really stuck out to me. The idea that wherever we are in life, we can always compare ourselves to what could be, to someone else we know who's maybe very successful, but in a similar or different kind of a way. And you don't want to do that. You want to enjoy all that life has and appreciate all that you have without constantly comparing to what else could be. And that's the sort of thing that I remind myself of pretty often.
I love it. So important. Finish your sentence. One thing everybody needs to spend a little bit more attention on when it comes to their branding is?
Asking critical questions, especially of your target audience. Just get the brutal honesty. How do you guys feel? Because a brand isn't what you say it is. It's what they say it is.
Amen.
It's their hearts and minds.
Yeah, I love it. Tell everybody who your ideal client is over at Bluegreen Branding and how they can connect with you.
Yeah, so we do brand strategy consulting, especially for business to business tech and financial firms, especially those going through some sort of a change. So growth, merger and acquisition, entering new markets. And in particular, we work with brand leaders and marketing leaders who are basically looking to step things up.
I love it. I think community, we talk a lot about branding on the show. I'm a big fan of it. And I think it's something that everybody needs to spend a little bit more time on and a little bit more resources on. You know, it should be looked at something like as an investment, not an expense. Some of the stuff that Shachar is talking about is really important when it comes to, you know, questions specifically. You know, what is a question that somebody asked me worth? What is a question that an expert that can ask me a question to get me to a space that I frankly cannot get to or get to as fast without them asking me the question, to get me to think at a higher frequency and a higher vibration. So think about that, not only in branding, but in all pieces of your business. Shachar, this was great. I appreciate you taking time. If you guys want to reach out to him, please do. And you can reach out to me and get me at jondwoskin.com. Thanks, man. Appreciate your time.
Right on. Thanks for having me.